It began with shame and ended in fire. In 1976, a quiet girl drenched in pig's blood turned humiliation into horror, and horror into art. Carrie wasn't supposed to last. It was small, strange, and almost never made. But from a trash can manuscript to Oscar-nominated terror, it became the blueprint for supernatural rage. Every scream, every prayer, every burning frame hides a story of obsession, cruelty, and faith gone feral. This isn't just the tale of a girl who snapped, it's the story of the people who built her, broke her, and bled for her. These are 20 weird, wild, and downright disturbing facts about the film that turned a teenage meltdown into movie immortality. This is Carrie. Number 1. The infamous locker room opening. Slow-motion steam, pink tiles, and Sissy Spacek's wide-eyed confusion set the tone for Carrie's entire descent into humiliation. But behind the camera, Brian De Palma staged the scene with an unsettling method. He decided to film Sissy's shower sequence first, before the rest of the girls. The reason? Many of the actresses were nervous about nudity, unsure how far to go in such a vulnerable scene. Spacek volunteered to go first, hoping to set the tone. Her courage broke the tension on set by exposing herself both physically and emotionally. She created an atmosphere where the rest of the cast could follow without fear. To summon real panic, De Palma told her to imagine getting hit by a truck. Her husband, Jack Fisk, whispered a childhood trauma into her ear just before the take, a car accident he'd survived. She used that pain, that shock, to power Carrie's horror. What we see isn't stage fright, it's memory turned into agony. Number 2. The Prom Night Massacre. The red baptism that turned horror into art took 2 exhausting weeks to film. 35 separate takes. 35 resets of the same nightmare. Each time the bucket dropped, the crew had to clean, redress, and relight the gym. A task that could take hours. The pig's blood wasn't real, but it may as well have been. The mixture of corn syrup and food dye thickened under the hot lights, sticking to everything, including Sissy Spacek herself. She refused to wash it off between takes, choosing instead to sleep in the same blood-soaked prom dress for days, so her emotional and visual continuity stayed intact. By the final day, the dress had hardened like armor, and the smell was unbearable, but Spacek wouldn't quit. De Palma later said, "She was Carrie all the way through. The blood wasn't just makeup anymore, it was transformation." Number 3. In the film's grave sequence, Carrie's hand breaking through the soil, the iconic hand from beyond, was not accomplished via prosthetics or body doubles. It was Sissy Spacek herself, buried in a box under loose soil, waiting for the camera to creep down. Brian De Palma pleaded for a stunt double, worried about safety, but Spacek refused. She insisted on owning the moment. There she was, under heavy earth, in darkness, focusing, as creaks of soil shifted above her head. This wasn't a simulation. She truly endured the weight and the claustrophobia. The camera pulled tight on that hand, emerging slow, then pausing, then creeping upward. That's not effect, that's presence. And the result? A horror image that bleeds archetype, a hand that rips through more than dirt. It tears through disbelief itself. Number 4. Not all of the pain was make-believe. During the gym detention scene, Miss Collins, played by Betty Buckley, slaps Chris Hargensen, Nancy Allen, across the face hard. What most people don't realize is that those slaps were completely real. Director Brian De Palma wasn't satisfied with staged reactions, so he told Buckley to actually hit her co-star to get the proper emotional shock. Allen endured take after take, some sources say over a dozen, until her cheeks turned visibly red. The camera kept rolling, capturing her flinch, her rising anger, her humiliation. Buckley later said she hated doing it, but De Palma wanted the sting to live on screen. What ended up immortalized in the film wasn't just acting, it was real skin, real contact, and real fury caught on film. Number 5. In the gym scene where Miss Collins taunts the girls, De Palma employed a subtle but ruthless trick. He stood behind Amy Irving during takes and whispered cruel, insulting remarks into her ear, lines not on the script, to provoke a flush of shame and authenticity. The discomfort you see in Sue's face wasn't just acting. It was De Palma's manipulation, a live psychological push to fracture her composure in camera. That kind of direction shows how the movie's emotional fractures were often manufactured in the moment. By stress, by subterfuge, by the director's voice. Number 6. When Sissy Spacek went into her audition, she transformed herself into Carrie in the most unglamorous way possible. She didn't wash her hair, slathered it in Vaseline to make it greasy, and she wore a sailor dress, one her mother had sewn when Sissy was younger. She looked ill, vulnerable, and marginalized.
Carrie. Miss Finch, would you?
Brian De Palma recalls being so struck by her authenticity that he reshuffled his casting. Amy Irving, once the lead choice, was downgraded to Sue Snell, and Spacek became Carrie. What's even more haunting is how Sissy kept that shell of isolation beyond the audition. On set, she decorated her dressing room with loads of religious iconography, studied Dore illustrations for her mental framing, locked herself off from the rest of the cast, and even slept in Carrie's blood-soaked prom dress between takes to stay in character. She insisted on entering scenes from static, silent positions, emulating people being stoned for sinning. In other words, she became Carrie long before filming began. Number 7. One of the most chilling things about Margaret White isn't her violence. It's her voice. Throughout Carrie, she quotes scripture to justify punishment, terror, and shame. But here's the eerie twist. Most of those verses aren't real.
Carrie? Carrie?
The filmmakers intentionally invented or distorted Bible passages, twisting them just enough to sound plausible to the audience. For instance, Margaret's line, "And the Lord visited Eve with the curse, and the curse was the curse of blood," appears nowhere in the Bible. These fabricated verses were designed to show how detached Margaret's faith had become, religion warped by madness. It's not the word of God she preaches, but her own delusion disguised as gospel. That decision made her sermons even more terrifying, because they sound real, but they come from a place of fanatic invention. Number 8. When Piper Laurie received the script for Carrie, she didn't think she was joining a horror film. She thought it was a dark comedy. After years away from Hollywood, Laurie saw Margaret White's over-the-top religious rants and violent outbursts as satirical, not terrifying. She even phoned Brian De Palma to ask if she should play it straight or go bigger, believing the story was meant as ironic commentary on fanaticism. De Palma told her to lean into it, and that single misunderstanding gave birth to one of horror's most unforgettable performances. Laurie infused Margaret with theatrical grandeur and emotional mania, torn between maternal love and divine delusion. Her wild-eyed intensity, a mix of parody and genuine terror, became iconic. That comedy she thought she was playing, it turned out to be pure nightmare and earned her an Oscar nomination. Number 9. Carrie doesn't just pay homage to horror history, bleeds it. Brian De Palma, a lifelong admirer of Alfred Hitchcock, wove Psycho's DNA directly into Carrie's world. The high school's name, Bates High, is no coincidence. It's a sly nod to Norman Bates, Hitchcock's repressed killer, whose duality mirrors Carrie's own split between innocence and rage. But the homage runs deeper. Composer Pino Donaggio deliberately echoed Bernard Herrmann's Psycho score. Those shrieking, stabbing strings during Carrie's telekinetic assaults are nearly identical to the sound of Marion Crane's shower murder. De Palma wasn't copying, he was creating lineage. He wanted audiences to feel déjà vu. That tingling sense that they'd seen this terror before, somewhere in the celluloid past. Psycho was about a mind unraveling behind closed doors. Carrie was about one unraveling under fluorescent lights. Both end drenched in blood and silence. Number 10, imagine this. Stephen King, broke, tired, and convinced he's a failure, sits in a dim trailer punching the keys of a battered typewriter. He's writing about a shy teenage girl with strange powers, but the words feel hollow to him. Cheap, embarrassing, pointless. Halfway through, frustration takes over. He rips the pages out, crumples them up, and throws them straight into the trash. Carrie, the story that would launch a horror empire, was almost lost forever, but destiny had other plans. His wife, Tabitha King, fished the pages out of the garbage, smoothed them flat, and urged him to keep going. She told him there was something powerful beneath the shame, something raw and real. King listened. That failed story became his first published novel, and Brian De Palma's film would later turn that same teenage outcast into an immortal horror icon. All because someone believed in the trash. Number 11. Behind the screams and fake blood, a real romance was quietly brewing on set. Actress Nancy Allen, who played the sadistic high school bully Chris Hargensen, began dating director Brian De Palma during production. Their chemistry, part admiration, part tension, added an unspoken electricity to the shoot. Allen was one of the youngest cast members, sharp and rebellious, while De Palma was the perfectionist mastermind orchestrating every frame. The two grew closer through long nights of reshoots and editing sessions, and their connection outlived the film itself. They later married in 1979 and collaborated on several of his later projects, including Dress to Kill and Blowout. In a story drenched in cruelty and humiliation, this strange real-life love story became Carrie's most unexpected twist. Number 12. The film's haunting epilogue epilogue, Sue Snell walking to Carrie's grave with flowers, isn't just a somber ending. It's a dream loop, engineered through one of Brian De Palma's strangest creative choices. He filmed the entire scene in reverse. Amy Irving walked backward, placed the flowers in reverse motion, and even mouthed her lines backwards so that when the footage was flipped, it would feel subtly wrong. Watch closely. A car in the background drifts backward, leaves sway in reverse. Visual details your mind catches, but can't quite name. De Palma wanted viewers to feel disoriented, as if trapped in Sue's recurring nightmare, where time has stopped moving forward since the prom. It's an eerie trick, part cinematic illusion, part psychological wound. That's why the moment feels unreal, dreamlike, and suffocating. It isn't closure at all. It's trauma playing on rewind. Number 13. After Carrie premiered, Sissy Spacek developed a secret ritual. She would quietly slip into theaters during the film's final minutes, often wearing a hat or hood to stay unnoticed, just to watch the audience. She waited for one specific moment, the ending dream sequence, when Carrie's hand bursts from the grave. Every time she saw people scream, flinch, or leap out of their seats, even when they knew it was coming. That jolt became one of the most famous jump scares in cinema, studied by directors for decades. Spacek said those reactions felt like poetic justice, a mirror of Carrie finally striking back.
It's all right. I'm here.
It was the rare horror ending that punished the audience for relaxing. They thought the nightmare was over. Carrie proved it never really was. Number 14. Not every relationship in Carrie was built on fiction. Actress Amy Irving, who played Sue Snell, the guilt-ridden classmate trying to make amends, shared the screen with her real-life mother, Priscilla Pointer, who played Mrs. Snell. De Palma loved the natural intimacy between them. Instead of rehearsing line deliveries to death, he allowed their scenes to play with a quiet realism, a mother's disappointment, a daughter's remorse, unspoken understanding simmering underneath.
Chicago, 2 years ago.
Chicago.
Pointer's protective tone wasn't scripted, it was instinct. Irving later admitted that performing opposite her mother added an emotional charge she couldn't fake. The dynamic softened Sue's character and gave her story a fragile humanity. In a film filled with monstrous mothers and broken daughters, their genuine tenderness feels like a tiny act of mercy inside a nightmare. Number 15. In the climactic scene where Sue returns to the ruins and confronts her nightmares, something slips. Priscilla Pointer, playing Mrs. Snell, Sue's mother, was so unsettled by Amy Irving's visceral screaming that she briefly called out Amy, her real daughter's name, instead of Sue. Panic, raw emotion, and maternal instinct collided. The slip is covered by the swelling score, but if you listen closely, you can hear it. A forgotten moment of real life bleeding into art. That flinch of reality, a mother momentarily forgetting the frame, undercuts the screen, reminding us how thin the boundary is between performance and lived terror. Number 16. In Carrie the novel, the moment of Carrie's death plays out differently than on film. In King's Ending, after blowing up a car containing Billy and Chris, she collapses in the road and dies there, not in her burning home. The film alters this. Carrie staggers home, confronts her mother, and perishes amid the ruins of the house. It's a shift from public to private, from spectacle to tragedy. That alteration deepens the mother-daughter confrontation, making Margaret's final act more personal. It tightens the emotional core. It also leaves the broader destruction of Carrie's rage implied rather than literal. Number 17. When Stephen King sold the film rights to Carrie, he was paid just $2,500, the cost of a used car in 1976. It was a handshake deal, signed before he had any real bargaining power and long before Hollywood recognized his name as a goldmine. King later admitted he was simply thrilled anyone wanted to adapt his book at all. What he didn't realize was that this modest check would ignite one of the most profitable author-to-film legacies in history. Carrie went on to gross over $33 million, launching a string of adaptations, remakes, and sequels, all from that single deal. In hindsight, it's almost poetic. The king of horror sold his crown jewel for pocket change, and accidentally built an empire. Number 18. The set of Carrie might have been soaked in blood, but one day it was also brushed with stardust. During filming, Steven Spielberg, then a rising young director fresh off Jaws, dropped by the set at the invitation of his friend Brian De Palma. Spielberg, fascinated by De Palma's visual style, wandered through the gym set, chatting with the young cast between takes. The visit quickly turned into legend. He reportedly asked several of the actresses out to dinner, including Amy Irving, who he would later marry. For a brief moment, two cinematic worlds overlapped: De Palma's nightmare-soaked prom and Spielberg's soon-to-be world of wonder. On that day, The master of sentimentality walked through the master of shock, and both left inspired. Number 19. If you pause Carrie during the wide exterior shot of the White family's house, you'll spot a small, weathered sign that reads Paxton Realty. It's easy to miss, but it's not a random set piece. It's an inside joke. A young Bill Paxton, years before becoming the beloved actor from Aliens and Twister, worked on the film's art department crew under production designer Jack Fisk. As a playful nod, Fisk slipped Paxton's name onto the property sign. It was Paxton's first uncredited film contribution, and the start of a lifelong friendship and collaboration with Fisk and Sissy Spacek, who later became his sister-in-law. That faded "for sale" sign, seen by almost no one, quietly immortalized a future Hollywood star before he'd ever stepped in front of a camera. Number 20. In Carrie's prayer closet, the little room where as a child she worships and fears, there's a statue she bows to. Most viewers assume it's Christ on the cross, but in fact, the statue is of Saint Sebastian, a Christian martyr often pierced by arrows. That choice adds a darker resonance. Sebastian is often seen as a symbol of suffering, persecution, and the body as a site of violence. It underscores Carrie's sense that her body itself is under siege, pierced, punished, tormented long before the prom night's carnage. Even after the credits rolled, Carrie never really died. She crawled out of her grave in remakes, references, and nightmares, forever reaching for anyone who thought the horror was over. Behind every scream in that gym was a real bruise, a whispered insult, a director pushing too far, and an actress who gave everything, even her breath beneath the dirt. Nearly 50 years later, Carrie still bleeds across generations.
It remained sinless. The curse of blood would never have come on.
A film born from shame, sculpted in cruelty, and sealed with vengeance. Because in the end, Carrie White isn't just a character. She's a warning. Humiliate the wrong girl, and she might never stop burning.